This is unprecedented. Could you imagine if during Trump's presidency, like, the majority of the US Air Force Reserve just got up and said, we're done? I want to talk to you guys about what's going on in Israel. So in Israel right now, massive protests are underway that which much of the military is given a thumbs up to, which much of the business sector is given a thumbs up to, much of Israeli civic society and civil society has given a thumbs up to, and most of the Israeli population is given a thumbs up to. These protests and the actions that caused it have caused Netanyahu's coalition to nosedive in the polls. Netanyahu, who barely was able to grasp onto power by aligning with the far right, including figures like Ben Gvir, who have been a thorn in his side ever since he has taken over this new government, due to the crazy statements he puts out and how he wants to visit the Temple Mount as a Jew is seen as extremely inflammatory. His other statements on settlements are not only fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but also extremely inflammatory. And now Netanyahu is trying to force through legislation that would make it so that the Israeli Supreme Court could be overruled with a simple majority. So let me guys give you an example. Let's say in the United States, the Supreme Court said that it was legal for somebody to write offensive music, that offensive music was legal. And this was in response to a song that was like, America sucks, or yada yada, burn the flag, or whatever. They say it's obviously covered by the First Amendment. We might not like it, but it is what it is. Supreme Court comes to that decision. What you would need to reverse that decision now would be 51 Senate votes and one more congressional vote, one more vote in the House than votes against it, one more yay than nay votes. And now you could flip over that decision, and now the Constitution is worthless. It has been torn to shreds. The First Amendment no longer applies due to popularity contest. The fundamental rights enshrined in society could be simply undone by a majority in the Israeli parliament. A majority which Netanyahu currently holds with the far right, and a majority that Netanyahu could then use after overturning the Israeli judicial system to protect himself, since he's going through high-profile criminal charges in connection to corruption that he's done in acceptance of gifts while in office. So not only does this allow him to gut Israeli democracy and the Israeli judicial system, but it would also allow him to protect himself, which might be why he's holding on to this plan so tightly and trying his best not to waver, even with the hardcore, like, large-scale protests against his government in doing this. And despite the reaction from much of society and despite international backlash, he still keeps trying to push it through. So let's watch this DW segment that gets a little bit more into the details before we talk about the fallout.
Media are reporting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to suspend controversial plans to overhaul the judiciary. That's according to sources.
Oh, I thought we were going to get to this later, but this is the big hook for today, is that Netanyahu has announced, after the massive protests, after the international backlash, after everybody seeing what his game was to protect himself from a mile away, he has decided that he is going to reel in the legislation and not pull it back and no longer try to pass it through. He is not getting rid of the legislation. He is not saying, I'm not going to pass it. He is not saying that, you know, it's over. He is simply suspending it temporarily, and he's going to reintroduce it later. That seems to be the plan, which is why I think that protests against the Israeli government are not going to end. These protests have exploded. They've united large swaths of Israeli society that are in a historically divided time. So it's honestly quite impressive how Netanyahu has acted as a uniter to the opposition. I don't think suspending this is going to be enough. It's going to have to come with the full withdrawal and a commitment to not reintroduce it to stop the protests. At least that's what I think.
sources in his Likud party. Opposition to the plans escalated on Sunday after Netanyahu fired his defense minister for speaking out against the proposed reforms. Israel has seen sustained protests since the overhaul was announced months ago. The plan would allow Parliament to override Supreme Court decisions.
Parties saying that they would accept whatever Benjamin Netanyahu is going to go ahead. But, Nicole, what we are seeing in this country is unprecedented. Today we've seen nationwide...
We don't have a translated version of the speech. Oh, well, then we can't watch it.
A nationwide strike. We've seen the airport being shut down, affecting some 74,000 passengers. All incoming and outgoing flights have been suspended. We've got hospitals saying that they will strike as of tomorrow and only be available for emergency care if these reforms are not being suspended. If the reforms are not being suspended.
So what she's talking about is another thing that I think also kind of lit a fire under Netanyahu, was these rumors of a possible large-scale nationwide strike. And the idea that it wouldn't even just be a strike from the side of the workers, but the thing that really scared a lot of people is that some business moguls were possibly signing on to a large-scale strike, meaning they would pay people to just stay home. That is insane. You don't see that often. You don't see it often because you usually do not get labor and the managers, the business class, the owner class, the people Marx hates. You don't usually see them agreeing on something and going out and working in the interests of that goal together. That isn't something you see very often. Definitely when it comes to the idea of striking, which business managers are usually against. And so if you can ever find a reason to be in favor of it, it has to be a pretty damn good reason.
A really unprecedented action that come in the wake of last night's spontaneous protest.
No, this happened today. Like, they were on strike today. They decided last night. So you mean there's like a large scale general strike? You got to send a link on this. What's this? J-Post. Israeli universities to stop studies because of judicial reform. Israel's research universities will stop studies starting from Monday. Representatives of the universities decided in a special meeting late on Sunday evening after firing Defense Minister Gallant. We, the heads of Israel's research universities, presidents, rectors, and management, will stop studies in all of Israel's research universities starting tomorrow morning against the background of the continuation of the legislative process that undermines the foundations of Israeli democracy. Damn, man. Damn. We will not read a single book until you stop.
3 months. The latest protests are fueled by Netanyahu's dismissal of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the first member of government to suggest the reform should be halted.
We are going to protect.
It's kind of funny that within 24 hours of firing somebody for saying that the reform should be halted, they halt the reform after firing him. Like, just pointlessly causing more malice against your movement by the people before then, okay, never mind, abort.
The democracy. We are here for the democracy.
It kind of shows that Netanyahu's a little bit shooting from the hip here, just trying to grasp at whatever he can to help himself.
Bibi is not here for the democracy.
We have to show ourselves and say, this is it, up here. This has to be stopped.
I'm not sure, but we have no other choice but to fight. And that's what we need to do.
The Israeli government wants to change the current system to allow parliament to override the decisions of the Supreme Court. The plan has divided the country. Far-right parties welcome the dismissal of Gallant, but opposition politicians say Netanyahu has crossed a red line. Israel has never faced such popular pressure on a debate about its democratic institutions.
And our correspondent, Rebecca Ritters.
Do we have pollings on these measures from Israel? Yeah, vaguely, but like, I think it was like 75% of Israelis now have a negative view of Netanyahu's coalition. The vast majority of Israelis are against the reforms. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's not good numbers for Netanyahu. The thing is, you know when I knew it was shit? You know when I knew that like he was in the shit house is when I saw what IDF soldiers saying they're not going to work until this is withdrawn. That when I saw IDF pilots, reserve pilots, when I saw IDF soldiers, when I saw the IDF doing this, that's when it was like, holy shit, this is unprecedented. Could you imagine if during Trump's presidency, like the majority of the U.S. Air Force Reserve just got up and said, we're done we're done until you reverse the travel ban, we're done. Could you imagine? It's pretty scary for Netanyahu. That's enough of that part of the story. Something that is probably causing a little bit of concern as the legislation getting pushed through is suspended and as people are breathing a short sigh of relief. But again, the sigh of relief is short because it is very clear that Netanyahu and his coalition do want to reintroduce this legislation. But something that was sent to me as stream was starting is this article from the Times of Israel. To okay overhaul delay, Ben-Gvir gets promise for National Guard under his control. Deal cut after National Security Minister reportedly threatened to quit coalition over decision to halt judicial legislation. Critics slam moves as handy Ben-Gvir a private militia. So for those of you who don't know, Ben-Gvir is one of the more far-right members of Netanyahu's coalition. He had said some pretty, we can say, inflammatory statements about settlements. He's made some pretty inflammatory statements about the Temple Mount. He is somebody that a lot of people genuinely believe is one of the more far-right members of the coalition. And I've even seen the word fascist kind of thrown around in his direction. I don't know exactly if I would classify him as a fascist. I guess I just don't know enough about him to use that designation. But what I can say is the dude is a bigot. He's absolutely insane. And he is somebody you should not be giving control over organizing a picnic, much less a police force. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir announced Monday that he had agreed to back Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's call for a pause in the judicial overhaul legislation in exchange for a promise to create his long-sought National Guard. Ben-Gvir circulated a letter to media outlets dated Monday and signed by Netanyahu, in which the Prime Minister vowed to raise the issue of forming such a body within the National Security Ministry and the upcoming cabinet meeting this Sunday. The announcement came after Ben-Gvir reportedly threatened to quit the government, endangering the coalition if Netanyahu moved ahead with a plan to halt the judicial overhaul legislation. Netanyahu, however, did not make any references to such a deal in a speech Monday evening when he announced a halt to the legislation until the Knesset returns from Passover recess. He says, "The reform will pass. The National Guard will be established. The budget that I demanded for the National Security Ministry will pass in full," Ben-Gvir tweeted out Monday evening. "Nobody will scare us. Nobody will succeed in changing the decision of the people." But wait, okay, fuck off. He says the decision of the people. You can see what the people want very clearly from the large-scale demonstrations going on in Tel Aviv and across cities in Israel. You can see what the people want from the polling data that has been put out, showing that the vast majority of people have soured on Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition, even though a decent chunk of them already were sour on it before it even started due to the including of people like Ben-Gvir. That's not even to mention the fact that basically everyone is sour on the judicial overhaul. So making a claim to like popularity in order to justify this judicial overhaul is complete bullshit. I don't really have much more to say about this. I do want to just send my support to the people protesting against the government. I want to send my support to the people who are trying to oust Ben-Gvir Netanyahu and hold him accountable for corruption charges. But what I do want to bring forward is this post by Ian Miles Chong. Many of you might know Ian Miles Chong from his terrible tweets, his terrible takes, or his just generally terrible attitude. But I wanted to look at this article he posted from the Jerusalem Post titled, "U.S. is funding Israel's anti-Netanyahu protest, Yair Netanyahu alleges." He reposts this article and says, "The color revolution in Israel is being funded by the United States." Let's read the evidence presented by Ian Miles Chong. This is a big claim that the reason that there are massive protests on the street of Israel right now isn't because they're angry about the judicial overhaul, that they're angry at the far right government, that they're angry at Netanyahu trying to save himself, that they're angry at this obvious power grab, that they're angry about the undermining of their own democracy and judicial system, which, if a democracy is going to function, it's going to need a strong amount of checks and balances. Let's see the evidence that it's not all any of that. It's just Americans giving them money. Let's see. The U.S. State Department is funding the anti-government, anti-Jewish reform protests in Israel. A series of tweets and retweets shared by Yair Netanyahu on Friday claim. In one tweet shared by the Prime Minister's son, it was suggested that the Americans are behind the protests against the legal revolution that is taking place in Israel. This, according to the tweet, was in order to pressure the Prime Minister to reach an agreement with the Iranians. So according to Yair Netanyahu, which Ian Mouse Chong thinks is a good source, is a valid source when they provide no evidence in a series of tweets, right? Just takes it at face value. The son of the Prime Minister is totally not a biased party when talking about protests against the Prime Minister. And the reason that America is doing this, not that they presented any evidence for this, but the reason that they're doing this is to push Israel to reach an agreement with the Iranians. Now, Iranian-backed militias just killed an American contractor in Syria and bombed bases in the region. Like a few years ago, we killed Soleimani. Ever since we've left the Iran deal in 2016, we have been unable to re-enter it. Do I think we should re-enter it? Sure, but if we have been unable to. I hope we're able to resolve that in the near future under Biden's presidency, but my hopes are not extremely high for that outcome. The idea that the United States would decide to openly fund or fund in any way protests against the Israeli government, which are coming out against judicial reforms and the trampling of democracy and a clear power grab, in order to pressure the Israeli government to negotiate with the Iranians is ridiculous. Number one, much of the protests that are on the street right now are people who don't want to negotiate with the Iranians. These protests have nothing to do with Iran. The decision that Israel comes to on whether they go through with or not go through with the judicial reforms, that's completely separate from anything dealing with the Iranians. Completely separate. I mean, I guess you can make the argument that these judicial reforms are authoritarian in nature and could degrade Israeli society, therefore making them weaker and a possible stretch. But it's an unbelievable stretch. These things are completely unrelated. The reason that Yair Netanyahu, the son of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, is saying this is because he wants to cover for his father. This would be like, who's an unbiased source on whether Biden's been a good president or not? I know, Hunter Biden. Let's go talk to Hunter Biden about whether Joe Biden has been a good president or not. Now, we all know here that Hunter Biden is a good, honorable man, and whatever he said about Joe Biden would be true, but in a lot of other instances when a child is saying something about their father, it wouldn't be that true. It wouldn't be the evidence you would want to review because they're extremely biased. But Ian Miles Chong apparently was able to take the unsubstantiated claims of the son of the Prime Minister and extrapolate that to a color revolution being funded by the United States in Israel to pressure the Iranian government based upon the claims of the Prime Minister's son. Absolutely fantastic investigative journalism, Ian. Fantastic. You truly care. My goodness, man. My goodness, what a moron.